Flight 1907, which resulted in the loss of 154 lives and became one of the biggest air accidents in Brazilian history. Let's understand the events that led to this great tragedy and the investigations that followed afterwards. Stay with us to learn all the details of this sad chapter in Brazilian aviation. Welcome to Channel 20 Tell a Story. If you're not already a writer on the channel, subscribe, leave your like and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single video from the channel. In today's video, we will explore in detail the tragic story of Flight 1907, which resulted in the loss of 154 lives, making it one of the biggest plane crashes in Brazilian history. In 2006, Brazilian commercial aviation was expanding, despite the economic crises that affected the sector, leading to bankruptcy of some renowned airlines such as VSB. Aiming at this favorable scenario, GOL decided to invest in new aircraft to guarantee the best comfort for passengers. Flight 1907 operated with a brand new Boeing 737-800, acquired for this specific route. The Boeing 737-800, registration PR, GTD, was delivered to GOL on September 12, 2006, configured to carry up to 186 passengers. This flight went from Manaus to Rio de Janeiro, with a stop in Brasilia. On September 29, 2006, Flight 1907 was scheduled for another trip. There were 154 people on board the aircraft, including 6 crew members and 148 passengers on board. Commander Decio Chavez Jr., experienced with more than 15,000 hours of flight, most of them in Boeing 737, and instructor of this model, piloted the aircraft. Co-pilot Tiago Jordao Crusoe, with more than 3,900 flight hours, the majority in Boeing 737, was also among the crew. That same day, the company Excel Air was inaugurating the flight of the new Embraer Legacy 600 jet, an aircraft that had recently arrived in the fleet. The Legacy 600 departed the Embraer factory heading to Miami Airport, making a stop in Manaus for refueling before heading to its final destination. The jet, registered as November 600 X-Ray Lima, was piloted by Joseph Lepore and Jan Paul Palladino, both commercial pilots, and carried 4 passengers, totaling 6 people on board. It is also worth mentioning that the 2 American pilots did not have adequate preparation for such a long flight with that aircraft. At 2:51 p.m., the jet took off from São José dos Campos, where the Embraer factory is located. At 3:35 p.m., GOL's Boeing took off from Manaus. At 3:33 p.m., Legacy reached 37,000 feet, about 11,300 meters in altitude. At that moment, the jet entered a collision course with the GOL Boeing, starting a chain of events that led to this tragic accident. In the flight plan, at 15:55, the American pilots were to descend to 36,000 feet, approximately 10,900 meters high. However, this never happened. In the opposite direction, Flight 1907 reached an altitude of 37,000 feet, the same altitude as the jet. At 16:02, the Legacy's transponder was improperly turned off. Minutes later, Air Traffic Control attempted to contact the American pilots, but to no avail. At 16:48, the jet's pilots also attempted to contact the tower, but received no response. Minutes later, Brasilia Air Traffic Control managed to establish contact with the Legacy and asked the pilots to change the frequency, but the jet's crew did not understand the request. About 3 minutes later, at 16:56, the 2 aircraft collided. The jet's left winglet cut off half of the left wing of GOL's 737, causing the Boeing to lose lift. Desperate, pilots Decio and Tiago tried their best to stabilize the aircraft, but in those conditions it was impossible to regain control of the plane. The Boeing 737 entered a tailspin and crashed 63 seconds after the collision in dense forest in Serra do Cachimbo, part of the Amazon jungle, near Paixão de Azevedo, in the state of Mato Grosso, Brazil, scattering debris in a radius of 1.5 kilometers. In the crash, all 154 people on board Flight 1907 lost their lives. The Legacy, despite suffering damage, managed to make an emergency landing at Cachimbo Air Base. None of the 6 occupants of the aircraft suffered injuries. The wreckage of the Boeing was only located the following day, on September 30th. The investigations into this accident are quite extensive and complex, involving unacceptable errors in the world of aviation. Transponder. We will briefly discuss the final report on this accident. The first error that started this chain of events was the fact that the Legacy pilots only had a few hours of flight time in a new aircraft before taking a trip. According to investigations, it is evident that the American pilots were still learning the jet's controls, turning off the transponder. and even the anti-collision system that emits an audible signal when another aircraft is on your route. According to the investigations, there were errors by the controllers and even in the approval of the flight plan. Another error cited in the final report was the difficulty in communication between the jet pilots and the controllers, as the pilots did not understand the controllers' English well. Furthermore, the local São José dos Campos tower informed the legacy pilots that they should perform the flight at 37,000 feet, but did not mention that at some point during the flight this attitude should be changed to 36,000 feet. According to the report, the jet's pilots were considered most responsible for the accident. Only one of the controllers was convicted, receiving a sentence of community service and a temporary ban from carrying out his duties. Furthermore, there was a military trial against a controller who was sentenced to 1 year and 2 months in prison. In 2007, American pilots Joseph Lepore and Jan-Paul Palladino were accused of violating air safety, but in 2008 the federal court acquitted them of charges of negligence. However, they continued to respond to the attack on air security. In 2017, the pilots were sentenced to prison by the Mato Grosso courts, but because they were in the United States, the arrest was not carried out, and their licenses were renewed. Brazilian justice still seeks to make the American pilots pay for their mistake and be arrested. We, at Canal Real Curioso, leave here our sincere and deep condolences to all the families of the victims of Flight 1907. That was today's video. I ask you to like, share with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. I'll stay here. Thank you, and until the next video on Channel 20 Tell a Story.